Save the humans. Yes, we are one race. We are one race. It's the human race. I live in the United States of America. It's very puzzling to me that somebody that's has my exact same skin tone, eye color, hair color, everything like that. They hate me because I'm white and they're not, but we look exactly the same. The only difference is our cultural identity. Or somebody who's a little bit darker than you. Or somebody who's a lot darker than you hates you. Some of the kindest people I've ever known are people from sub-Saharan Africa. Beautiful dark skin tone. And same could be said, people who came from India that have that beautiful darkest of dark skin tones. I love it. Not because I feel that my race is inferior. I think it's beautiful. I think black is beautiful. And I'm not black. And I'm not dating somebody who's black. Okay? I just, as a human being, blonde is beautiful. It's hard for me to say that. It's hard for me to acknowledge. Maybe I don't win the beauty contests. How can I say beautiful is beautiful? That's right, beautiful is beautiful. I might not win the Miss America contest. But after all, it's the person inside that matters to God. Christianity is so different. If you really examine Christianity in its essence, it is different from, or as the English would say, to other religions. In its true form, in its purest form, it says you cannot be good enough to make it into heaven. You have to acknowledge that you're not good enough. God had to bestow his goodness upon you in order for you to make it into heaven. There is absolutely no way, even the best person on earth could ever qualify to get into heaven. However, some Christians, they seem to believe that I live a very moral lifestyle. I never had a drink of alcohol in my life. And yet you're just a mean, resentful, vindictive, selfish, uncaring person. But you think you're going to go to heaven because you never had a drop of drink. Really? Well, I just know I never used a bad word in my life. If I did, well, it wasn't that much, and, I can be excused. Well, you can make excuses for yourself, but you will not excuse other people. Well, the fact is, I just don't like people. Their personalities irritate me. You don't sound like a great humanitarian to me. Why would God want a crabby person like you in heaven anyway? Well, because I don't know. I'm just going to sit on the couch and watch the television. I don't like to think about it, and I don't want to talk about it, and I'm going deaf. I can't even hear you anymore. Because I don't care. I never did care. Well, who knows what's going on with you? Who knows? But we know, some people that seem to be very quiet and unobtrusive can be kind of malevolent and manipulative. But, I guess that's a topic for another day. Could you manipulate God into letting you into heaven? I don't think so. I think that people that don't care about being nice to other human beings are not saved and they're not born again. As I said recently to my husband, you should really care about your unsaved parent. You should care, and if you don't care, there's a problem. You don't care if your parent is saved. But here I am being a hypocrite because I never took my dad to church in his final years. But it's so complicated. He had a lot of infirmities. He had mental infirmities, he had physical infirmities. You don't need to take somebody to church for them to get saved. He had been hearing the gospel message his entire life. When I was a girl, when he wouldn't even go to church, I mean, you could not drag that man kicking and screaming into a church. After my parents' divorce, the only time he went into a church was for a funeral or the wedding, the private wedding that he had in the Lutheran church with my mother. He never, ever set foot in that church ever again after that second marriage. I don't remember him ever going. My mother and I would always go. So it's strange, isn't it? And the reason why my mother left the Catholic Church is because she was a divorcee and she didn't think she could take communion. And so she went to the Lutheran church for a while, and then after I left home, suddenly, she's okay with the Catholic God again. She starts going to the Catholic church. A funny thing, I love my mother. She was honest. I kind of hope I do hope she's in heaven, but I don't know. I don't know if either of my parents actually went to heaven. What it takes to get to heaven is faith. I hope they had the faith to get there. But I said, Mother, I wasn't attending the Catholic Church at the time. Why do you not associate with your fellow Catholics after the services? She says, I don't want to have anything to do with those people. Like, she would go, she didn't like her pastor or her priest because he was too liberal. He was a lefty. And she didn't like any of the people who attended the Catholic Church. And yet she kept going to the Catholic Church. I don't know. God just forgot. Well, you got divorced, but God his memory is kind of faulty. He doesn't remember that you committed adultery and got a divorce. So it's like, oh look, it's a new convert. Oh, hello, Kathy. Welcome to the Catholic Santa Claus world, where everything is just pretty and we play music and you smell nice smells and you leave and it's just your little dose of fantasy 2 or 3 days a week. Catholic churches, I think they still have masses every day. So I'm really not against the Catholic Church, but I could tell you some things. Wondering, what is the point of going through the motions and going through the rigmarole and even learning Latin if you don't really know if you're going to go to heaven? There are these religious people. They go to church, but they're not really sure if they believe what the pastor or the priest says. Case in point, I met somebody who's the director of a chorus. He proclaimed himself to be an atheist, but he attends this church because he loves the people at the church. He doesn't believe in God, but he just loves this church. I'm not going to say he's the director of the drag queen chorus, but it's something. I mean, please, folks, our steps are ordered of the Lord, aren't they? But, the hardest thing of all for human beings that aren't loved, that aren't wanted, that aren't valued, that aren't treasured is when you realize that if you're not somebody's potential sexual partner, I'm sorry I said it, they just don't want to waste their time on you. And the thing is, as a woman, you just don't want to encourage people if they think they're going to possibly have a chance to date you. I'm married, I went through this whole thing with the adultery and how horrible it was. And I don't blame my mother, but it was so wrong of her to do that. And it was so wrong for him to entice her to do what she did. And it was so terrible that my parents got divorced. And it was so terrible that I lost my best friend and was moved to a completely different school district where I was bullied and really pushed to almost the brink of suicide. if you were really to be honest, the only thing that saved me was ice cream and HBO. At least that could distract me from, and Weird Al Yankovic and Columbia Records. You could get like 10 cassette tapes for 1 cent or whatever. Yeah, that stuff helped me. It may not have been Jesus, but it was like the grace that I needed just to get by. But here I am years later, finding myself different from the society around me. It seems to have always been the case, though. Well, you're not from around here, are you? My parents used to go to bars, and they weren't ashamed at all to go to bars because they came of age in the late 1950s and early 1960s, where everybody had a cigarette in one hand and a martini in the other hand. Now we know how dangerous it is to smoke. But of course, marijuana, you can't get lung cancer from smoking pot, only tobacco. What kind of crap is that? That's really? Oh, come on, please. So my grandparents on my mother's side, they were heavy into drinking and smoking. Grandfather died of emphysema. But they always seem to have a happy life, you know? Where can you go where you could actually have a happy life? I mean, if you go to a church, well, where do you live? Where do you come from? People are just sizing you up. Are you trying to date my husband? Even if you go into an AA meeting, like a husband and a wife were running this meeting in the basement of a church or some sort of a religious building. And I was like, oh, people are so welcoming. This is wonderful. And then she looks at me, she says, oh, you have a wedding ring on. Are you just wearing that to keep the men away? And I'm like, it just seems weird that you would see me like I'm there to just pick up men or something. Really? And then I went to like the women's meeting where she was part of it, and she just wasn't as friendly. Her husband was like super friendly. When I went to the co-ed meeting and I went to the women's meeting, I just felt like I was given the cold shoulder. Oh boy, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? Going to group counseling sessions, and not an AA place, but similar. And a lady's leading a class, and she says, what do you want from your prospective employer? Because, apparently we're all unemployable, even though I have 3 college degrees. We know it's a joke. Hello. You may as well have gotten your college diploma out of a Cracker Jack box. Honey, we don't respect. Okay. But anyway, I digressed. And she says, what do you want from your prospective employer? What are you looking for? And a guy that's Hispanic says, well, this guy had gone to prison, so he must have, killed somebody or raped somebody or committed armed robbery, because you don't go to prison for, stealing cotton candy from a little girl. Yeah, he did some hard time. He says, I want somebody who looks like me. I'm thinking to myself, what do you look like? A parakeet? Like, we're all human beings. Oh, no. But he feels accepted if he is an insider, and anybody that doesn't look like him is an outsider. That's his religion, So basically, white people have the same problem. Well, you don't live in the right zip code, or you're not blonde enough. You don't drive the right car. You're not young enough. You're not, what? I'm not well educated enough? Well, you didn't go to Wellesley. You didn't shoot somebody at Brown University. Oh, no. That's right. I didn't shoot somebody at Brown University. Oh, wow. Folks, I don't know. Love human beings. Love human beings. Save human beings. It's okay to donate to animal charities over the holidays, but what about human beings? Where is the love?